Grassi.
Here.
Mrs. Stevens.
Here.
Mr. Bullier. Here. Mrs. Harrington.
Here.
Mr. Nicholson.
Here.
Mr. Lynch.
Here.
Mr. Munn.
Here.
Mr. Pappas.
Here.
Mr. O'Connor.
Present.
Mr. Downs.
Here.
Mr. Kamari.
Present.
Mr. Watson.
Here.
Mrs. Stokes.
Here.
We have a quorum.
All right, please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, I'm going to start this evening's meeting with just a quick update. We typically have full board meetings at City Council. We're obviously not there today because of conflict of schedule. Mr. Ellis, we could not be here, so Mr. Todd is filling in. This is not being broadcast live. We will do our best to get it uploaded as fast as we can, but it has to move a couple of hands. We're, you know, in this age of technology, we're still playing sneaker now, where we hand stuff over. So we'll do our best to get it loaded as quickly as we can, but unfortunately, the circumstances fell this way. All right? As we move forward, we'll go on to the reading of the previous meeting minutes. October 14th, is there a motion to approve?
So moved. Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Next item on the agenda is the superintendent's report of communications.
So I'd first like to thank you. I'd like to start with just recognizing staff. We have Employee of the Month starting again. So I'd like to start with the elementary school and invite Principal Jer forward.
Good evening, everyone. This is Jerry Sweeney. Jerry Sweeney has served as a face of comfort and stability at McClellan for 29 years. She is dedicated to her students and teammates and goes above and beyond to make sure everyone has what they need. Last year, Jerry shifted with new expectations and needs in our building and provided classroom support while Unified Arts teachers taught remotely. She did all of this without question because it was best for kids. Her positive attitude and flexibility last year set an example for all of what a consummate professional does. We are lucky to have the privilege of having her on our team. Thank you, Jill.
No, it's older than 29 years. Really?
Congratulations.
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 Thank you.
We'll move on to the middle school. Mr. Hobby.
So I'm here tonight with Taylor Todd. Taylor Todd is the teacher on the University of Maine program, which is some of our highest need students in our school. The reason Taylor's here tonight is during the summer we, like all the schools in the city and in our surrounding area, we had difficulty finding staff and we weren't able to find the teacher for the program. So we came to the special education department and posed the question, what do we do? We're really stuck. We need some help. Taylor stepped into that role, and she was an exceptional case manager before on the Colby College team. But the University of Maine is a whole different world, and it requires a teacher with not only the skills to teach, the case managing skills to manage some very difficult caseloads, but also a teacher who could balance the needs of all those students. And Taylor's done that, and done an exceptional job of that. And our students are so much better. And I think the best thing I can say about Taylor is one of the first things she changed about the program is she brought all the kids into the classroom to learn together, which traditionally had not always been done with those students. And I think they benefit from that. And I hear story time is a big deal for those students. So please join me in congratulating Taylor Todd as our Employee of the Month.
Now you're asking. Thank you so much.
Congratulations.
It would be hard to even elbow though.
Down to the high school, Ms. Gonzalez.
Good evening. I'd like to introduce Jeffrey Moses. Jeff is a passionate teacher. He brings art and enthusiasm into his classroom on a daily basis. He seeks out opportunities for students to showcase their artwork, and it's evident when you enter any of his classes that he truly enjoys being there and has a great rapport with his students. One of his students writes, "Mr. Moses is such a genuinely nice person that he makes everyone feel comfortable in his room. He would go the extra mile to make a student excel in their work and feel comfortable exploring their academic and artistic freedoms. Mr. Moses would be the perfect employee of the month for his genuine personality and his drive to help all of his students, no matter who they are, to be successful not only in this class but in all of their classes. So please seriously consider having him as your choice of the month," which we did. So I'd like to introduce you to Mr. Jeff Moses, our Representation Employee of the Month.
Congratulations, Jeff.
Thank you.
Congratulations, thank you.
It's nice to have our teachers back in visiting us here. So I just have a few thank yous for my report. I want to thank the New Hampshire National Guard for their work with Major Heater the other day in bringing Black Hawk helicopter to share with our students and our neighborhood, to be honest with you. One gentleman said he actually didn't mind having to re-rake his lawn because of all the leaves that he had gotten rid of now being blown back in. So it was quite an event. I also wanted to thank the Rochester Fire Department for their efforts to quickly engage the school in the 5 to 11 optional clinics that will be coming. So families received last night a basic 2-page overview of the program. Today, an announcement that said they would receive a survey tonight. This evening at 6:15, a survey went out to those families. They have until Sunday evening at 5 p.m. to voice their desire to have 1, 2, 3 of their children vaccinated in the school. And one important note that the state wanted and we passed along in the survey is that families have the option to come to school the day their child is vaccinated to be with them if they so choose. So in the survey, that's one of the options. I would like to be there present for my son's vaccination, so we're going to communicate all the vaccine dates out, but if I know that 5th grade's going later, I'm going to tell that parent, don't come until roughly this time and you'll be there for your son's vaccination. So I just want to thank Chief Perry Plummer, Deputy Chiefs Hughes and Wheeler for their quick response and organization skills. Another positive note is that they are going to be able to offer boosters to all of our staff. That was something that we were very concerned when the executive board at the state did not receive or take in the federal dollars recently, which I believe today they actually did then accept. But the boosters fell out of that budget when we didn't accept the money at the exec level. But the fire department actually figured out a way to do it before this new round of money came in. So we're going to be working, the staff was very excited. I met with the executive board today. So we're probably going to have 2 Fridays and working with the rec department hopefully to house it over here so staff would come over on their free period, get their booster, and then go back to school on 2 consecutive Fridays in the near future. So that is, oh actually, excuse me, one other item. We do have elementary school choral concerts coming up. And I'd like the board to maybe have a discussion about whether or not we think that's a good idea to do. There's some concern from staff and parents about, again, bringing large amounts of people, singing. So again, I think it's worth a conversation and other to discuss that. That's all I have.
Any questions for Mr. Pusey? I have 2, Kyle, if you could. In regards to the 5 to 11 vaccines, I'm assuming that the 15-minute wait period after the shot will be monitored by the fire department?
Correct.
Okay, great. And then we have potential dates. Is this something we're going to do during the school day with the kids?
It is within the school day, yes.
Okay, so like lunch times? Or?
Yep.
But not during education?
We'll stagger things. We may have a small impact, but we're gonna do our best to
Minimize it?
mitigate that. Yep, with recess and what have you. Yep.
Okay. Mr. Toddy? Oh, Mr. Perry? Sorry. A lot of dates.
The ones administering the shots?
They are.
Our staff is not?
They are. Yep. They've just asked that our nurses be present because they have strong relationships with our students, and young students might be nervous about needles and what have you. Families know that, so they'll have the option to come in, but if a mom couldn't make it, the trusted nurse could also be there as well.
But we're not asking our nurses to
No.
do this.
Any other questions? Great, seeing none, we'll move on to the next item on the agenda, public comment. If anyone from the public wants to address the board, please head to the podium. If you could state your name and limit your comments to 5 minutes, we'd appreciate it.
Hi, my name is Carol Petrusevich, School Board Superintendent Chair. Thank you for having me. One, I'm looking forward to hearing what curriculum you guys reviewed in your recent instruction committee meeting. I'm very excited because I didn't see anything posted about that. Two, I'm handing out a piece of paper that should be coming around now. This is really timely, actually, because I didn't know that you were having these vaccine clinics for the 5 to 11-year-olds that were just approved by the FDA. I'm asking that you put this in with your informed consent for the parents. You can also do the entire study if you prefer. It's from the CDC, but that's always a lot of work for parents to click in and read the study. So this piece of paper specifically works with what was looked at, starting at age 12, because obviously the 5 to 11-year-olds haven't been reviewed yet. But it's very important, as you guys have stepped into your role of the medical field, as the education department, to make sure that they have informed consent. I'm also wondering, are you having the mobile vaccination clinics report to VAERS any of these kids that are having adverse events? Or are you requesting that the parents do, or the school, is somebody on the school board doing that? So I'm not sure how that's being tracked. And also, does the school board, are they setting aside any funds for anything that might happen in an adverse reaction way? Now I know it's the fire department that is actually doing the injections, but you as the school board are bringing in medical interventions on school property. So I'm just wondering, have you guys set up anything to not only track anything that happens to the students and or pay for them if anything happens to the students? That's all. Thank you.
My name's Tabitha Davis, it's written in here. I do live in Rochester, you all know me. So a couple things. COVID committee, wondering why it's not being videoed and then posted. Is this the only committee that's not being videoed? Another thing is I stated at the COVID committee that if you're going to test these children, especially young children in elementary, that it's going to take longer than 5 minutes. We all know they squirm and you're going to shove something up their nose for a testing. They're going to fight if their parents want it. I'm totally for parents' choice. What are your plans to, because I really would like you guys to talk about this because I think it's good if it's going into our schools. Have a plan if a child is going to have it and they fight, what are you going to do? What happens if somebody has a nosebleed when it's done? Who is doing this? Is it the nurses or is it the fire departments that's doing the shots, or is it something completely different? I don't think it should be during education at all. The shots, is it going to be before school, during school? Paul, thank you for asking those questions. And I really hope it's not during education because that 15, 20 minutes of them missing class could break them or not. So just consideration, just the testing for the swabbing, not during education, before school, after school. I don't think it should be done during recess because that's really the only time they get to have recess where a cold is coming so they won't be able to go outside. Thank you.
Anyone else?
Hi, my name is Bethany Duntley. I always say this, I'm a resident of Rochester for 21 years. I'm going to start off by quoting Ronald Reagan. Freedom is never more than one generation away from extinction. We didn't pass it to our children in the bloodstream. It must be fought for, protected, and handed on for them to do the same. Or one day, we will spend our sunset years telling our children and our children's children what it was once like to be free in the United States, where men were free. I hear that. We have a freedom of choice, and for some reason, I don't know why they keep pushing the vaccines, masks. Tonight, I dropped 4 girls off, 4 girls, well, one that's called they, girls, whatever, to the governor's inn. They had to wear masks. It's a public event. I know it's the school event, but these kids weren't planning on wearing masks. So it's kind of a down. They kind of complained about it the whole way over. So, informed consent. Agreement to do something or to follow something, to allow something to happen only after the relevant facts are known. In contracts, an agreement may be reached only if there has been full disclosure by both parties. Vaccines, there's not full disclosure. We don't know what's in them, and you want to put this in kids? It should be the parents' choice on masking, on vaccines. The state of New Hampshire, for example, COVID cases, I've been doing my own research. In 16 days, we've gone from, in New Hampshire, 131,790 cases, October 25th. November 9th, 142,000. Deaths, 1,543 on October 25th, 1,613 November 9th. The percentage of getting COVID was I'm looking at my notes. 0.0955 out of 1.38 million people in New Hampshire. 0.09 to get COVID. Never mind to die. To die, yes, it's sad to die, but we all know death does happen. But to die in the state of New Hampshire, there's 0.011% chance of dying of COVID. I don't think people know that. You guys got to do your own research. Parents need to do their research. If you want to mask your kids, then so be it. Do it. You want to vaccinate your kids, so be it. Do it. But no one should be forced. And these things going around and for kids, I mean, come on. How many kids have died? I mean, the last I saw on the hearing from Congress, when they were under oath, it was 550 cases of kids that died. And under oath, they said not one died of COVID. Not one. Not one kid. Underlying conditions. That was under oath under Congress. So maybe someone's lying, I don't know. But if you can show me statistics and numbers like I do, I'm not a math person. I have to research it. But I am a percentage person when it comes to numbers. I do bookkeeping, I do accounting work, I know all about the numbers. But people need to be informed. And by making somebody take something that they don't want to take or pushing it on parents, if they don't want to do it, they shouldn't have to. Herd immunity. What is herd immunity? Does anybody know? Herd immunity is people that have gotten COVID and then the vaccinated people that chose to get the vaccine. So New Hampshire, what do we have, 60% vaccinated? And then we have 141,000 people that have COVID? Is that close to herd immunity? I mean, I'm kind of confused because this is all common sense. I just came here tonight to voice my opinion. I appreciate you guys being here. I just think that people in Rochester need to know more and that you guys as a school board should not only be biased by providing what can happen if you get COVID, but also give statistics on what happens if people recover. That's very important for people to understand. Because in my view, the percentage of dying, that's not a very high percentage to shut down and to make people wear masks. Thank you for your time.
Anyone else for public comment? Okay, seeing none, move on to committees. First committee is building. Mrs. Stevens.
The building committee met on November the 4th. We had a facilities update by Mr. Toddy. He gave us a report about some trainings and different things that they had accomplished. We also had a great presentation from the state of New Hampshire regarding state building aid and the fact that it looks as if state building aid may be returning as potential. And we all remember when we had to fund the East Rochester School as a district, how important that is to have opportunity to have the building aid. And to follow that, we had a report from an architectural firm regarding different options of our schools. They did an overview of the schools and rated them, and made some general recommendations for things for us to talk about and look at in the future. To follow up on that, I would like to make a motion. The committee recommends, and I so move, that we request a JBC committee through the Rochester Council to look into possible construction of either renovation or a new building in the future.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes.
And that does it. We had a presentation regarding the electronic engineering in our buildings, and we referred that to finance for approval. And that does it for building.
Thank you, Mrs. Stevens. Next committee is instruction. Mr. Watson?
Instruction met October 21st. Dr. McDonald brought forward an out-of-state field trip request that was received for the band to go to a parade in Massachusetts. Because at this time, the board policy does not allow out-of-state field trips. We need special approval of the full board. So the committee sent it to the full board because of the shortage of time for a telephone pole. Which I don't know if we'll get the results of that at some point. Is that on the agenda?
They did not go.
Oh, they didn't go?
No.
Okay,
They withdrew the field trip.
okay, all right. And we had discussion that maybe we should revisit that policy. And what would happen if we had another request like that, so. And then we also heard from Heidi Zolman, CIA coach, gave a presentation about professional development that was offered October 13th in regards to the new core reading program at the elementary school. And that was it for instruction.
Any questions for instruction? Mr. Downs?
Why did they pull out the field trip?
They just didn't want to go.
All right. Anything else? Moving on to personnel. Mr. Bollier.
Good evening. There is a separate addendum which we'll cover after what's in our packets. So item 1, the committee recommends and I so move the board approve the following resignations. Deborah Flanders, teacher, Zachary Uritia, PCA technician, and Jennifer Hersom, principal.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes.
Item 2, the committee recommends and I so move the board approve the following nominations. Kat Randall, assistant principal, and Jamie Campo, school social worker.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes.
Item 3, the committee recommends and I so move the board approve the following stipend position nominations. Christian Sturtevant, school social worker.
No. Elementary library department head.
There's a correction. You might be looking at the past one. It's elementary library department head.
Okay, I'm just looking at the
That's okay.
packet and email, so, sorry. What he said.
So moved.
All right, we have a motion and a second. I'm glad it's not just me.
I can't
All
say
those-
half these names.
Yeah, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion
PC
passes.
disconnected.
Alrighty. Item 4, the committee recommends and I so move the board approve the following winter coaching nominations. It's a lengthy list for you to review.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
I'll abstain.
Yep. Sherry, you can note Mr. Kamiri sustaining, please. So we have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes.
Abstain.
Huh?
Item 5, the committee recommends and I so move the board approve the following extracurricular nominations. Leslie Marsh, Elementary Yearbook Advisor, and Melissa Arsenal, Elementary Yearbook Advisor. I think those are still the same in the
Second. All right, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes.
Going to move to the addendum before we get into item 6.
Okay.
We have resignations. The superintendent recommends and I so move the following resignations. Valerie Borer, paraeducator. Bethany Gould, paraeducator. Alexander Landy, PC technician. Brendan O'Brien, teacher. And Molly Smith, paraeducator.
Second.
A motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes.
Second item in our addendum, the superintendent recommends and I so move the board approve the following nominations. Kelsey Lloyd, teacher. Amanda Bothello, paraeducator. Deborah Roche, Rochester Community Education Coordinator. Jacqueline Terrian, special education teacher. And Michelle Widdison, special education teacher.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes.
The superintendent recommends and I so move the retirement of Donna Martin, secretary.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Oh, yes, sir.
What school was Mr. High School?
High school, yeah.
Thank you.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any additional questions, comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes.
Item 6 from our agenda, we did review the organization org chart with our technology department, and the committee recommends and I so move the board look over, I don't think it's a motion, but recommends the first reading of the systems technology job description.
This is first reading, we don't need to. we don't need a motion.
And then this one would be a motion, the committee recommends and I so move the board adopt the CIC organizational chart that's presented in our packets.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Ms. Stokes?
This was the organizational chart that's been in place for a year, correct? It's just putting it in final place.
Right.
I just wanted to make sure that anybody that wasn't there was aware of that.
Just an interim, now would be.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes.
And that's all for personnel?
Thank you, sir. Next item on the agenda is special services. Mrs. Harrington?
Thank you, Chair Lynch. Special Services met on October 21st. We reviewed enrollment data, bus data. We had dissolved and divided some more, one bus, R5, into 4 other buses, and also dissolved and divided R4 and R14. And then we reviewed attendance data. Currently, most schools are averaging in the 90 percentile of average daily attendance. And that was all that we reviewed at special services, and there were no actionable items.
Any questions for special services? Seeing none, we'll move on to finance. Financial Committee recommends and I so move the board approve $340,000 from bonded CIP line and $70 from district budget line for the EEI controls project.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion or question? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Committee recommends and I so move the board approve $21,094.74 proposed for wireless wiring project at Rochester Middle School, which will be completed by Omada Technologies.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Committee recommends and I so move the board approve $51,620.70 for the proposed wireless and switching equipment project, which will be complete by the Omada Technologies. Any discussion?
Just a good note, that comes with It's 5 years of support.
That's correct. And this is for the actual hardware, the hubs themselves.
Similar to the hubs that are in our student right now.
First line is actually someone coming in and running the wire.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Any other questions? Seeing none, all of those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Next committee on the agenda is policy. Mrs. Grassi?
Policy Committee also met on November 4th, was it 4th? No, October 21st. The committee recommends to the board for second reading and adoption the following policy. Policy JO-R1, instruction for student admittance and transfer. And policy JPA, student district criteria for evaluation of students under IDEA. This one is re-lettering. It will now be policy IHBAA.
Second. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes.
And secondly, we have for the board to, for first reading, the following policies. Policy EB, safety programs with minor changes, and policy EBCA, crisis prevention and emergency response, which has no changes, just up for review.
Great.
And that would be the policy for October.
Thank you, Mrs. Grassi. Mr. Downs?
Yeah, I got a question. The last full board meeting, I asked for the policy to review the discipline procedures. What came about?
Somebody inquired about that, and we were told that it was spoken to the administration and we're all set.
I did, but
Yeah. I'm happy to review that.
Put it back on the agenda.
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah, somebody remembered, but it wasn't on the agenda.
Okay.
You weren't in attendance, so
No, I wasn't.
we
I
didn't
wa-
know what you were
Okay.
looking for.
No, that's understandable.
So why don't you connect with Ann to make sure all your concerns are then addressed when it's put on the agenda for policy? Is that
Okay.
good? She runs that committee.
Sounds good to me.
Mrs. Harrington?
I believe the conversation was that the policy is according to the law, so the policy can't be changed because it fits the law. But what we did ask for was a presentation on the, Superintendent Pusey help me with the abbreviation, MMIDS or MTSSB. So we asked for a update on, you know, how the procedural part of that policy is working within the schools. So I believe that presentation will be at instruction in November, if I remember correctly, this month.
Instruction or?
Policy.
Policy.
I don't know.
No, I think it is instruction.
I think it's instruction.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we were switching presentations in November and December so that moving that up sooner so that we can hear how the procedural aspect is working.
But if, you know, a board member wanted to review, you know, policy, I think we should do that as well.
I think it's worth looking at. Mrs. Stokes?
So I wasn't gonna bring it up in policy, but discussing discipline issues, would it be wise, since we have SRO officers, to ask them to come to a meet? I know probably wouldn't be policy, but, I mean, our teachers are dealing with the education aspect, and our SRO officers are dealing with a lot of the behavior. I think it might be wise for us to, I don't know exactly what it entails and what they do, and maybe what they need from us. So we have a lot of people come and present. It might be a wise idea to have them come and present at one of our committee meetings, but I don't know which one that would potentially be at.
Right, and I don't disagree with that, but I think first we have to figure out how the current policy is implemented to the process, and then we get beyond that and understand that might be something that comes out of that presentation.
Correct.
It might not be a bad review, but you just reach out to the instructional.
Right, and the only reason I'm bringing it up now is because if the policy can't be changed because of federal guidelines, maybe the next conversation to be, what is the SRO, you know, is there anything that we can be doing to support the SRO, or is there anything that that SRO office is seeing that can potentially help the discipline issues if we're getting phone calls and emails saying there's discipline, so.
Yes, Mr. Boyer.
I think that's putting the cart before the horse, to be honest with you. Our educators are already dealing with discipline issues. Yes, our officers, yes, they are part of that mechanism, but we need to go over what's the procedure first, look what our educators have to deal with, then I think the last line of defense might be the SROs, so that might be a little premature to get them involved. You know, it's kind of like looking at step 10 before you should be looking at step 1, in my
Can I
opinion, so. that's
Can
all.
I respond? I actually was only mentioning it because of the policy, but I think when you bring all stakeholders together, it's not putting any cart before any horse, it's just bringing us all together to say, how do we solve the problem collectively and collaboratively? So I just didn't want to leave that part out. So I do think we need to have conversations with our staff. But I'm saying our educators and our teachers are really trying to just educate. And if we're having a lot of behavior issues and discipline issues, it would be wise to bring the SO officers into the conversation. It wasn't to insult anybody, it was just to say, have we thought about making sure that we're supporting them since they're in our buildings? So it was saying, bring them all together.
Any other conversation? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to the next item on the agenda. 5-year, we didn't have a 5-year, so we have something in December, correct, Ms. Stokes?
We did, yes, we have a meeting in December, we did not have one in November.
Okay. Next subcommittee report is ad hoc. Mr. Pappas?
The ad hoc committee met on the evening of November 4th. We had a presentation from a Mr. Steve Munier of Convenient MD. Gave all the details of their swab and send program. It's a program that's running in dozens of schools in the state of New Hampshire currently. I can give a summary of what he said. I think many of you were here, but I'm happy to get into more details. So let me know if you have any questions that I don't explain. I believe the program would run roughly about the same time in each of the schools every week or every month or whenever we decide to do it. So if it's at, say, 1 o'clock on Tuesday, it'll be a similar time pretty much every week, or whatever the duration is. It's done during non-academic time, so study halls, lunchtime, prep periods for staff, et cetera, things like that. So to minimize any academic time. The district medical staff would be there to do the swabs and then pack it up and then send to the nearest Convenient MD location, which is in Dover. The district would figure out how it would get couriered there. Only children that have the parent permission would be participating. Kids who fight or argue or don't want to participate, we're not going to push them into it. So we're not going to force kids to have their nose swabbed, even if the parents give permission, things like that. And beyond that, after some discussion, the committee make a motion. The committee recommends, and I so move, that we approve the swab and send program by Convenient MD.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Ms. Stokes?
I was there at the meeting, and I think this is a really good thing. I think the only concern I have is doing it during academic time, and I know it was discussed at the committee, but I just wish that we could do it before and after school. But I did have a question. Kyle, we do offer staff the flu shot, correct?
Yes, through our health insurance.
Do we offer it for students as well?
There's a flu clinic that goes out yearly to parents, and they've opted in for years and years.
And is it done during school hours as well? Okay. All right.
Mr. Kamiri?
Thank you. Donna, after listening to the presentation the other night, originally when this was brought up, it was Convenient MD or the vendor, if you will, would come into the school and facilitate the testing. After listening to the presentation, a lot of onus is on us in our staff for, everything, from testing to transporting to everything. And I think even if we had a survey of a third of the parents would be willing to do this. Yeah, I think if a third of our student population was to be tested on a weekly basis or whatever the schedule may be,
And we relied on our nurses and whoever to do this. I think it's just a larger workload that may not be manageable. Though I support the program, I wish the vendor or we didn't have to facilitate all the work of it, if you will. Right down to transporting the samples. So, is there a plan to, or what is the plan? I guess is using our staff to do all the actual swabbing and transportation and all that. And is there a possibility of whether we, get Frisbee or somebody in to possibly do some of the work?
Defer to Mr. Pappas.
I'm going to defer to
So
Mr.
Convenient MD did offer this program this summer when I presented it to you, and at that time, if we had opted in, we would have received the white glove service. Their staff, their time, their delivery, all of those things. Like many schools, everyone was considering things on their own timeline. We were kind of at the back of the line now. The white glove service has now stopped because they've reached staffing capacity. Their hope is to onboard more people to then re-engage the white glove service. At this time, they're not able to offer that, but hopefully that's a possibility in the future.
Any other questions, comments? Hold on, Matt. Ms. Stevens?
I wonder if it would be possible for the district to find somebody to represent, to go from school to school and just charge them with doing the testing. Like a very part-time type of position to keep the stress off the teachers. I mean, I don't know, but I know that they work very hard from when they get in the morning until way after the kids go home at the end of the day. I'd hate to, though I believe and support the program, I want to watch out for our staff too, that we're not overtaxing them.
Anybody else? Mr. Pappas?
I just want to remind everybody, in the discussion, the purpose of the testing is to identify people who might be positive and not show symptoms and prevent the spread, so we don't have as many outbreaks, or hopefully no outbreaks, like we've been having in the various schools.
Anyone else? I'm having a really hard time with this one, personally, for two primary reasons. One, we're doing everything we can to keep our schools safe. I feel very confident this board has worked diligently with the administrative and staff to make sure we're doing the best we can. Second, which is a bigger concern for me, is we continue to add things to our staff's plate, and I think that's unfair. Our teachers, our custodians, our admins, our paras are doing things well outside the scope of education, which is what they went to school to do. I think adding this to it, and from what I understand, the workload is only being dissipated to the people in the building. That's a problem for me. I understand you're going to do your best to stagnate it so it doesn't impact the educational process. Completely respect that. It's still our staff. We're asking these teachers, these paras, these admins to run these programs. I can't say yes to that. I just can't. That's my 2 cents. I am going to ask for a roll call on this, so we're all very clear on where we are, and it's out there on the side. Mr. O'Connor.
I just want to bring up, we did discuss the concern of staff and the possibility of having a stipend administered to, I think, the nurses is what we talked about in the meeting, right? So I don't know if the board would consider maybe looking into that to help support that a little bit. I do have similar concerns, but where we're primarily using our nursing staff, if they're in support of doing it, then I think it's a good thing for the school district. So.
Okay. Hold on. Mr. Pappas, did you have something? Mrs. Harrington?
Under the FAQs, it asks, do we need to hire staff? And they said maybe, and they said that we would need a coordinator and preferably a backup coordinator as well for coordination, like a contact person. Do we have that person identified?
Yeah, along with that, we also had the conversation about the nurses swabbing, and I know they're using protection, but what happens if they were to potentially come down with COVID and what that protocol would be. So I would say that if this does pass, we should be concerned about that, because if we're asking them to swab and potentially come with asymptomatic, we should also be making sure that they're not having to use sick time or no pay if they get COVID.
Mr. O'Connor?
Just to respond to that, Community MD did detail that they would have the highest level of PPE protection in administering those tests, which to me essentially would make them safer than they are in the current work environment.
Mr. Downs?
You say Community MD is going to have all that, they're not going to be there. They're not going to be there to administer this, so are they going to supply us with all this PPE stuff?
Yeah.
And the training and
the training.
everything, it's in the package that we sent out.
Hold on. Mr. Watson?
So I support this program 100%. And if, whatever it takes to make it happen, you know, I would support stipends, and if you're concerned about staff that doesn't want to do it, we could make it a volunteer. We could offer staff, ask for volunteers, and the ones that want to do it, give them a stipend, whatever we think appropriate. But I think it's important that we figure out a way to make this work. I think we're looking for ways to, you know, to not make it work. But I think, you know, if we got the will, we think it's important, you know, we just need to get it done, so.
Understand. Mr. Downs?
So there's multiple places we can go to get tested. I don't understand why we're bringing this into the school and just causing just that, another disruption to the students, to the staff, instead of trying to get back to normal, let them focus on their education, their tests, whatever they have coming up. It's just another distraction. I understand, like, we've all been for the parents' choice, so putting this in there gives them that choice, but they also have a choice to go to CVS and get it done.
I was just gonna say, it's an equity thing, we have some families that can't go to the pharmacy or don't have insurance, so this is a leveling the playing field. And it's also a layer of mitigation that we have the authority to impose to safeguard everyone, not just those that are tested. So if I chose not to be part of the testing program, but he did, and he got identified as being COVID positive, I'm safer because of early detection, and he's out of school. So that's the premise of the whole program.
Mr. Watson?
So I know people that have gone to Convenient MD to get a test. They waited up to 4 hours to get a test out in the parking lot, and then they're called in. But beyond that, most of the people getting tests are symptomatic. That's why they're getting tests. This would be for asymptomatic staff and students. You know, very, you know, a quick test, non-intrusive, and it's going to identify some people that are positive, and that will help us prevent, you know, further outbreaks at the schools, because we'll catch some students and staff that otherwise we wouldn't, because they're not symptomatic.
Mr. Pappas?
I want to reiterate the fact that the goal here is to catch people who don't know they have it, and as they walk around, go into their classrooms, or whether it's staff or other students, are sharing the virus with everybody along the way, and that's what's causing outbreaks in our schools. We had numerous cases in the high school just recently, so now we have to mask up the high school. That's what we're trying to prevent, those events from happening, keep the kids in the school. Because what happens is if we have an outbreak where, you know, dozens and dozens of kids are going to have it, we're going to have more and more mitigation, and teachers, if we don't have the staff. You know, the idea is to keep the kids in school so we don't have other bigger issues. I was tested today, and in my school, and literally I walked through a door, went right to the person at a computer who logged me in. I then got a test tube, walked over to the person, they gave me a swab, I swabbed my own nose, put it in the tube, and I was literally out in less than a minute. I can't guarantee that that's going to be the same way, but I know that, when the program starts, yeah, there are going to be bugs. But I trust that the staff would figure out a way to streamline things and, after a month or so, probably figure out a way to streamline things and get the kids in and out and get the staff in and out as quickly as I did today. It wasn't as quick when I first started the SAS program at my school, where I would have to wait 5 minutes, 10 minutes. But now students and staff, you walk in, you check in, bada boom, bada bing, you're out in less than a minute.
Mr. Downs?
Are we gonna be able to track if this does interfere with instruction period time? Like, 'cause we say it's gonna be done during these certain times, but like you said, it could end up running. Can we keep track of seeing if it does run into instruction for the kids, so we can just see, just moving forward, if we do approve this?
Sure, I remember principles like that.
Okay.
Mr. Weary?
Have we settled, or I guess, what is the frequency of the testing for the individual? Did we, I know it's like, is it once a week?
So
Is it?
it's going to be part of the plan that puts together, so part of the presentation that he talked about is that there'll be a point of contact, me, that will then decide, right, what our plan of operation will be. Largely, it will be related to the number of people that choose to opt in. So again, he said in a district our size, he said, if you had about 40 or 50% people opt in, he goes, which is extremely high, he says probably 20 to 25% will be reality. He said a once a month swab and send would be reasonable to expect. He said, but if you're, again, on the lower side, he said it might be something that you could do every 2 weeks or every week if you so desired. So again, there's a little, latitude with the board if you just said you wanted to only do it bi-weekly, twice a month, or if you want to do it once a month, right, that could be part of the plan.
And we'd be doing the whole district at the same time?
So it would be different days probably, like certain schools would go on a Monday, certain schools would do it on a
So,
Tuesday.
and just because of going back to the survey we sent, I know the numbers, we decided to throw them out or whatnot, but it was a third of the parents, right?
There are
Roughly.
parents that took it.
That took-
It was only about 700 parents that took it.
Okay, so, but if we did, again, the staffing issue is the biggest thing. I mean, a third of the middle school or a third of the high school that would be tested is a significant number for our staff to be doing. Is there a possibility of talking to Frisbee or somebody as far as facilitating, getting people in to help facilitate?
I can ask, but I know in talking to other representatives of Frizzy, they're struggling with staffing just like we are.
I understand, and it's just, that is my biggest hangup, and a third doesn't sound like much until you get into the student population of 900 or 1,400 students, and we're expecting, we're asking the staff to, in addition to their regular duties of the day, implement this. And, it may be a minute times, 300 students or whatever in a day is significant time, 60 minutes in an hour.
When the nurses and I talked, they talked about, pooling their resources, so again, using their nursing team to kind of help. So again, depending on the system, if a quarter of our students were to get this, you'd think that maybe just 9th graders during study halls and lunches would be doing it on Monday. 10th graders on Tuesdays, right? So that it would be a cycle over time. So again, we get to manage the system the way we want to manage it. So we have a little bit of autonomy there, and I think that's where the nurses come in with administrators to figure out the logistics of this.
How many nurses do we have in the middle school? So you'd be taking nurses out of another school to bring them in for the middle school?
Potentially.
Or larger population, middle school?
Could
high
be,
school?
yep.
Because we have, what, two nurses at the middle school?
Correct, yep.
Ms. Grassi?
I just want to point out that Dr. Chan has said that the way to stop this pandemic, there's three levels of things we can do. We can mask, we can vaccinate, and we can test. And you need all three of these to control this virus. And I just think this is one choice that we've asked parents and teachers if they want it. And you have respondents as high as 700 that want it. That says a lot to me, that they were willing to do this and interrupt their day for a minute just to have the confidence that they're not spreading the virus.
Mrs. Stevens?
I'm going to support the program. I would like to just ask that perhaps, Mr. Rakusi, that you could look into the possibility of somebody being able to assist. And, just to see if that would be a possibility to take some of the pressure off our staff. Thank you.
Mr. Pappas?
Mr. Pusey, are you able to look into whether or not there would be funds available for stipends for the nursing staff participating? And then maybe come back next month?
We could figure that out, correct?
Thank you.
Anyone else? All right, we have a motion and a second. We've had a discussion regarding the topic at hand. We did ask for a roll call. Could Mr. Rakusi please when you're ready?
Mrs. Stevens?
Yes.
Mr. Bolier?
No.
Mr. Pappas?
Yes.
Mr. O'Connor?
Yes.
Mr. Downs?
No.
Mr. Mudd?
No.
Mrs. Harrington?
No.
Mr. Lynch?
No.
Mr. Kamiri?
No.
Mrs. Grassi?
Yes.
Mr. Nicholson?
Yes.
Mrs. Stokes?
No.
Mr. Watson?
Yes.
7-6, it fails.
All right.
Can I just, am I allowed to add something here? I just want to say that I think at the next COVID committee, because I voted no, and I actually want to support the program. So I think if a few of those kinks could be worked out, like how much would the stipend be, and that type of stuff, I don't think it's something that we just get rid of. So I just wanted to be clear, like the program I would support, I just hope that we can figure out some of those kinks. So as somebody that voted no.
I mean, I can say confidently right now with federal funds and current surplus that finding money for a stipend is a no-brainer. It's done. So that's not a hang-up.
And we could ask for help from Stratford County Public Health and Safety. I bet there's
Absolutely.
some assistance.
Yeah.
They have to be willing to do it.
And can I just add something on to that? Now that I found out that the flu shots were during school, another big hang-up was just having it, like, I wish that we could come up with a potential plan, maybe one that says before and after school so it doesn't affect academics, you know what I mean? Like, maybe come up with a plan to say these are a few options. Those are the reasons why I was voting no. So I'm glad that one of those type of things could be worked out, to say that we have a potential stipend but not the offering and how much that is. It's, it's hard to vote yes on something like that. So I want to thank the committee for doing their due diligence.
Mr. Watson?
Well, I was going to say, I have complete confidence in the administration that they can work out those details to everyone's satisfaction. So if you really support the program in concept, you could ask for a reconsideration right now. We could get it moving rather than waste another month.
I would personally reconsider it if it did not affect academic, like
Well,
their
I think they
contracted
told us
hours.
that he would
Before-
minimize that as
Yeah,
best he could.
before and after school, I guess, would be, you know what I mean?
Mrs. Stevens?
Can I respond to Mrs. Stokes?
Okay.
Before school, after school, how do you get the kids in and out if they're bus riders? We're offering this program to support families, to make it more convenient for them to be able to get testing. So if you're doing it before school, after school, how are you going to get the kids home? You're going to add another level of responsibility onto the parents to make arrangements to get their kids, on the, back and forth from school. I agree with you, Mrs. Stokes, that we shouldn't be interrupting their learning day, but there are a few minutes, if we believe that this is important, there are a few minutes that we can use in a day to get this done without interfering with before or after.
So I'm just going to respond.
Did she get clearance to respond? Point of order?
Yes.
Okay.
It's not so much the students that I was more concerned with, because students can do it during lunch and recess. I think it's the contracted hours with staff, because if we open it up for them to be able to do it during prep time when they should be they need that time to prep. So for me, it was more for staff. If it was maybe potentially having staff do it before and after, and the students during lunch and recess, I'd be willing to compromise that, because I agree. I think asking students that are buses to come in early or late, I think that would be a hardship. So I think for me, it was more of the staff.
Mr. Pappas?
Karen, 60% of teachers said they want to be part of this program. So if it's available during their prep time or during their lunch, they're going to go do it. If it's one time a week, one time every other week or whatever, they're going to find the time to go swab their nose for a minute and then put it in a test tube and go. I'm just saying that it is so easy, folks. It is so painfully easy. It literally takes less than a minute.
Mrs. Stevens?
No, I'm all set.
Okay. Ms. Grassi, did you have something to contribute?
Just that we all say we want to stay in school. We want to keep the kids in school. And with the way the positivity rate in this town's been going, it's not looking too good for being in school. And we've got holidays coming up. We've got a decision we're going to make about concerts. We're so concerned about doing everything we can do. And this is one more thing we can do very easily. I don't think we can do the before and after school. You're asking staff to extend their day. The staff that are administering the test, you're asking them to work all day and then extend it. Come in early or stay late. I think the stipend makes it a reward for doing it, but I would guarantee you most of our nurses are going to say, we need to do this, because it will prevent the spread.
Okay. Mr. Nicholson, did you have something? No? Mr. Bollier?
Let's have a procedural question. When we voted on something, we have a determination. Can discussion continue on the issue that we just voted down? This is on a procedural question.
You can allow it, but it can only come up for vote again if on the side as a motion to reconsider.
I was just wondering, because we're going back and forth with this stuff.
No, I think there was just some last minute conversational pieces. Is there a motion to reconsider? Because if there's not, we're going to close this and move forward. Mr. Watson?
Oh, it would have to be somebody that voted in the majority to ask for that
Right,
reconsideration.
so someone who voted no would have to motion for reconsideration.
I'll make a motion to reconsider.
Is there a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Mr.
No, it's not a big.
No, I understand.
Okay.
So I'm going to ask for a roll call.
All right.
Mr. Pusey, if you could, everyone understands what we're reconsidering, correct?
Well, this is just the motion to reconsider. It's
Right,
not the- yeah.
right. So everyone's saying yes to reconsidering the motion. That's it. It's not the actual motion. You're saying yes to reconsider, okay?
But what does that mean? I guess I'm just confused.
Okay.
We'll vote on it again.
So we're asking for permission for this board to reopen that vote. Okay? Mr. Pusey, if you could, please.
Mr. Pappas?
Yes.
Mr. Nicholson?
Yes.
Mr. Bollier?
No.
Mrs. Stokes?
No.
Mrs. Grassi?
Yes.
Mr. Kamiri?
Yes.
Mrs. Stevens?
Yes.
Mr. Downs?
No.
Mr. Munn?
No.
Mr. Lynch?
No.
Mr. O'Connor?
Yes.
Mrs. Harrington?
No.
Mr. Watson?
Yes.
7-6, yes.
All right. So now the motion can be reconsidered. So by process, Jerry, we have to restate, we have to make the motion again in the same dialogue. Okay. Mr. Pappas?
Again, the committee recommends, and I so move, that the full board approve the swab and send program by convenient.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any more discussion? Mr. Pusey, roll call, please. Oh, sorry, Mr. Nicholson. I apologize.
Just saying, I mean, so surveillance testing is the only way to really have a good idea of what your population has. I understand the difficulties of school and educational time, but as Mr. Pappas even said, the time gets quicker and quicker as time goes on. He said 4 or 5 minutes the first time, but now he's less than a minute. If he's busy that day, he doesn't go down. If the kids are busy that day, if they feel like they don't want to go down, you can't force the kids to go there. So it is not a forced thing. So the numbers will fluctuate. Hopefully we get a statistical value that is of the population, so we actually have a good view of what our population is. That would be my only ask to make sure we get to. It'll get faster as time goes on and be less than a minute. When you come in there, sign your paperwork, here's a swab, real quick on the front of the nose. Chances of any injury from an anterior nasal swab is very, very, very small unless you have a super dry nose and super high blood pressure. It is non-invasive. You probably get more damage by blowing your nose.
Mr. Downs?
This does get approved. Can we make sure we get the stats of how many people are getting it done, time, how long it's taking?
I'm assuming that would be something.
Make sure it's during, every month, we have this in, your notes.
I agree with you, something that ad hoc should be reviewing and bring to the board.
Okay.
Because that committee's designed to do that specifically. Any other topic or discussion? Mr. Mott?
We keep talking about time. Yeah, I might only take a minute there, but I remember as when I was a kid, I'm going to take a long way there, a long way back.
Yep.
It's more than just a minute of swab. It's the amount of time I don't want to be in class. I think there's more to it. My other question is, 60% of the teachers that replied to the survey wanted it. How many teachers replied to the survey?
356.
Which is what percentage?
You mean of this?
What percentage of teachers
Oh, we have about 1,000 employees.
So about a third of the staff, so 60% of a third said yes. So it's not 60% of our teachers that said they want to do this. It's much, much less, so.
Any other conversation, Mr. Department?
No, it's in my head.
Okay, just checking. Anybody else? All right, Mr. Fusi, if you could roll call, please.
Mr. Downs?
No.
Mr. O'Connor?
Yes.
Mr. Kamiri?
Yes.
Mrs. Harrington?
No.
Mr. Munn?
No.
Mrs. Grassi?
Yes.
Mrs. Stokes?
No.
Mr. Pappas? Yes. Mr. Belair?
No.
Mrs. Stevens?
Yes.
Mr. Lynch?
No.
Mr. Nicholson?
Yes.
Mr. Watson?
Yes.
7-6, it passes.
All right. We're good to move on now. Sorry. Rec Commission, Mr. Kamiri, if you could please.
So we met, Recreation Commission met this past Monday. An item of note pertaining, could involve the schools, is the Recreation Department has taken over the senior center here in this building. And with that, there's programs that, as it gets to reopening, it's been pretty well shut down because of COVID, but as it reopens, the rec department is looking to, down the road in the near future, start bringing in volunteers and whatnot, potentially as for our National Honor Society students or club type students that need volunteer hours or would like to work with seniors. There may be potential to get the two groups together, and that's the highlight of the recreation and school board conveyance, I guess. That's it. Thank you.
Mr. Kamiri. Anything under old business? Anything under new business? Stokes?
So I have two things, if that's okay. First of all, I saw Mr. Kamiri's hat, so since tomorrow is Veterans Day, I just want to say thank you for your service. And I know tomorrow, on the 11th day of the 11th month, at the 11th hour, is when we are honoring our veterans. So if anybody is watching, please know that we support you and we thank you for your service. Second one was, Mr. Lynch, you might be able to help me out here. When we were standing outside of the polls during election day, somebody came up to us and mentioned that we have the top 10 breakfast, we have the awards night, but they were saying that they would ask that we do more to recognize our students that are going into the military. So again, correct me if I'm saying anything wrong, I know that they stand up during graduation, but they were hoping, because they are going to serve, and tomorrow being Veterans Day, they were hoping that we could do something more to recognize our military personnel that are graduating and leaving. I know that we had mentioned maybe talking to Colonel Heater, Major Heater, thank you very much. But I'd like to see if we can get that ball rolling, because once they mentioned it, it's something that I never considered, but I think that we should. And I don't think it's something that would really be expensive, but I think it's something that we should be doing to honor those veterans. So is there a committee that we might want to bring it to, or do we want to talk to the major and
I
see?
think you would start with the superintendent to say, hey, can you find out what we do to recognize these students outside of graduations? I agree with you. We have the top 10 breakfast, we have National Honor Society, we have awards night. What do we do for those kids? And he can come back and tell us what it is. It's something we need to dig into. Which committee would that fall under? Instruction, probably? So if, what I would do is ask Mr. Busey, we're not doing that now, to connect to Mr. Heater and find out what they do to recognize those students who have accepted or are moving on to the Army, the Marines, the Air Force, just so we can understand if they are recognized, maybe we're not aware of it, and if they're not, what do we do to help them be recognized? Is that fair?
Yes, and I would encourage the person, because unfortunately I don't remember who brought it up, so I'm hoping that person is potentially watching. Email myself, Mr. Lynch or Mr. Rapucci, because I want to make sure that we got exactly what they were potentially looking for. I don't want to speak for them, but is that what it was, Mr. Lynch? They were just wanting to recognize the military. So that's all I had. So yeah, if we could look into it, I think it's something that they definitely deserve.
Anything else under old business, new business? This is Steve.
Just a reminder that the Spalding Music Department is sponsoring the review, musical review, Friday and Saturday at the auditorium at Spalding High School. I believe it starts at 7 p.m. Tickets are available online. It will be a mask-required event, but, the kids have worked really hard and have been really excited, so hopefully we can have a good turnout for that. Thank you.
Anything else under new business? Anything under other? Mr. Downs?
So during public comment, we had some people talk about stats, COVID. So I think we need to make sure we listen to what our public, when they come and talk. So if we can just make sure we put on the COVID ad hoc.
You guys realize he hasn't actually recorded yet, so I don't know that I would pick on him yet.
We good?
I hope so.
Great. Mrs. Harrington, do you have something under other?
Superintendent QC asked us to discuss chorus concerts at the elementary schools.
Yeah, that was on my list, so I was trying to show you that. Thank you for bringing it up. I'll open the floor up to choral festivals is what I wrote down, which isn't the right thing. But we're on the same idea. General consensus from the board, I'm not asking for motions, but as a topic of discussion, where's your head at communally on this? Mr. Boyer.
If we're doing a school play, the review, is that a play? I'm terrible at that stuff. Anyways, if we're doing that, we're doing sporting events and everything, then I would say should allow our holiday concerts to continue, and it'd be up to administration on this one's being masked, and that's a call on the local level, as I would say, what they want in their building.
Okay. Anyone else? Mr. Nicholson?
I would say on the masking side of me, it's whatever that school community is at already. Like if it's not the high school right now, it's masked because the high school is masked. If it was at a point when the school wasn't in that point, then I could understand it being different. But for me, it would have to be whatever that school is working as in that, I guess, way they're working masked or unmasked or whichever policy it is. If it's in that building, it should be following the daytime rules into the evenings.
I was gonna say, we're also doing social distancing, so we may want to limit capacity, every other seat, that type of thing. I don't know.
I think it's imperative that we just try to remember, over the last 2 years, we've done a lot to try to really help how to do things, and we got really entrenched in things that were far beyond our normal realm of controls. We as a body of 13 write policies to oversee the day-to-day function of the school falls on Kyle and his staff, right? So understanding we're here writing policies, those guys have to be the guys doing the work. So I have absolutely no problem with these happening because I think normalizing as much as we can for these kids to get back to that social, emotional networking and having excitement before the holiday. I think it's quintessential for them, their growth. But I think it's up to the school and the administrators to decide if it's a safe setting for masks or not. That's their jobs. If we can't put the kids in, or staff or parents in danger, we have to kind of work together. So I would lean on it that way. I agree with Mr. Nicholson and Mr. Boyer, like the high school has to do it because of the cluster issue. If they're in that situation, they have to evaluate and make the best decision possible. But I think it's important to these students to get back to these activities. Anyone else? Mr. Kamiri?
I wholeheartedly agree with you, except for the fact that we're still, it kind of goes back to the staffing issues again, it's easy to say, do it, but we have to do it within whatever parameters still, which involves more time, work, effort, thought processes, plannings, all across the board. So I think we just need to be cognizant that it's easy to say they'll figure it out, and there's more to figure out nowadays, to return to normal and stay in school. It's just being cognizant of that thought. So.
Makes sense. Anyone else? Ms. Harrington, there's a halfway almost.
It's another
Okay.
that's not related.
Got it. Anything else on the chorus activities instead of choral festival? Okay. Mrs. Harrington, the other?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Lynch. In light of transparency, I want to bring a concern that I have to the full board. It's similar to what Mr. Pappas brought up, but it's from a different concern and point of view. I'm really concerned that school board member Mrs. Stokes has been discussing publicly on social media the termination of a former employee. I believe that my understanding is we are not to discuss personnel matters publicly. That's confidential, and she's gone as far as insinuating the reason behind his termination. So, in light of transparency, I think it needs to be brought to the full board to be discussed. And related to that, Attorney Grossman, I think it's in our best interest as a school board, given the liability. Well, first question is this a legal matter currently?
It is. It's in litigation. There should be absolutely, I'm not in social media, so I don't read it. There should be absolutely no discussion by any board member of any either personnel matters or specifically if something's in litigation, there should be absolutely no mention of it whatsoever outside this venue.
So it is a legal matter. So as a result, that becomes a liability when someone on this board is discussing a personnel matter. So what I would recommend, Attorney Grossman, is that you reach out to our Primex attorney. I assume Primex is the one dealing with this lawsuit, representing the school department. And I would ask you to ask them their legal opinion of what we need to do. Is it a cease and desist letter to this board member? Is it a gag order on this board member? I don't know. I'm not an attorney. But I think that some action needs to be taken because it is a liability and it comes down to our taxpayers. And I don't want this creating more money and dollars lost as a result of the unprofessional and unethical behavior of a board member discussing a personnel matter. And I would like the full board to discuss it because this should be brought to all of us.
So I just want to be clear that publicly there was a termination of DY. It's been in the paper. I was not the only one that discussed the termination of that person. There was also another board member that was in Foster's commenting about that. I do not have discussed the reason for his termination, so that would be incorrect. But again, the termination of DY was the one that was publicly, it was voted in public. So feel free to come and ask me any questions that you may have. But up until today, you just confirmed that there was litigation. How would I know that there was litigation? I'm not involved in any of that. So I wasn't aware that there was litigation. I'm not involved in that, so.
I think we've discussed that before.
Several times.
Yes.
And I'm just curious, what have I said publicly? There was a termination, so, if we want to have that discussion, I'm more than welcome to have it,
Ms.
but.
Stevens?
Well, I think the insinuation was definitely there. Maybe you didn't come out and say something, but when you stood at our forum with a group saying they've got to go with all of our names written down, it made it look as if we were doing something improper. And the fact of the matter, if anybody on this board has been improper, it's probably you. So, just, as you say, just saying.
Am I allowed to respond to that? Or no? Okay. So I didn't make any signs. I stood outside. No, I didn't make any signs. And so I'm not really sure. I didn't hold any signs that were outside. But again, if somebody wants to hold a sign and make a comment about potential board members not wanting to be there, I don't know why that would be on me. I didn't say anything about it. But again, I think that we should have had a conversation. And I do think I voted no on the termination in a public forum. I do not support. My vote was no. So I didn't discuss anything that was in non-public. I didn't discuss anything that was wrong. And if you're upset about a sign because somebody didn't want you elected, I don't understand how that's my issue.
It's not, ma'am, it's not the point of the sign.
What was the point of the sign?
I don't know. I'm asking you what the point of the sign.
I didn't hold a sign or make a sign.
I'm going to make.
No,
you
hold
can't.
on.
Point of order.
Point of order, you cannot do that.
Go ahead.
Mrs. Harrington?
The concern I'm bringing up is the commentary that's been posted publicly on Facebook. The insinuation of his termination was blatantly posted on Facebook. The insinuation of why he was terminated. We shouldn't be discussing a terminated employee no matter what. It's a personnel matter. It's private. That's my concern, is all this stuff being put out there on Facebook, which is public.
So, I'm going to ask this question procedurally. Are you making a motion to have Mr. Attorney reach out to Primex?
Yes, please.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. So, just to be clear, the motion is for our attorney, Mr. Grossman, to reach out to the Primex attorney handling the litigation of this specific situation and find out what they want, what we should be doing as recourse.
Yes.
Okay. Any other conversation about that? Ms. Stevens?
I think we just need to be open and we need to be looking to make sure that we protect the district from anything that could come up in the future. You know, we need to ask the right questions, and like Mrs. Harrington said, I'm not an attorney. So, you know, I think we just need to make sure that we've got our ducks in a row.
Okay. Mr. Pappas?
Just to point out too that we had a vote, it was taken, we don't talk about personnel issues in public ever, and we had a vote, we move on. Case closed. If somebody wants to reconsider that motion, we can bring it up and talk about it, but not until that happens, if I'm not mistaken.
Right.
So we don't talk about things outside of this board, and with personnel matters, that's in non-public.
Right.
Period.
Mr. Watson?
So I haven't seen what's been brought up here specifically. So I don't know if we need a formal motion or if it's just enough to just bring it to our attorney's attention and let him look into it, and if he thinks he needs to talk to Primex, do it. But I'm not going to vote for this because it would imply that I think there's been some wrongdoing where I don't know. So I don't have a problem with him looking and see if there was, but I don't want to, put it out there like I'm accusing a board member of doing anything, because I don't know that. So to me, it's all secondhand. So.
Anything else? Mr. Downs?
I wasn't here for this whole what happened, so I'm going to be with Mr. Watson. I'm not going to vote for it because I'm not familiar with it as well. So just putting that out there.
All right, so we have a motion and a second. Do we have any other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
No.
Okay. So we have
We just do a raise hand, just show of hands just for Sherry's,
Yeah,
keeping.
who says no?
Yep. Sherry, just so you got,
He said no's?
These are the notes, just to make sure I know, because it was just a quick no, so thank you for doing that.
Bob.
Thank you.
That's a roll call now.
Well,
Names
we
is
can
roll
call
call,
for
otherwise
it.
it was 4 to,
Well, she needs to make sure she knows the
which
name.
could have just been 4, otherwise it's a roll call, with the people who put no, who put yes.
All right, anything else? All right, we have pretty lengthy non-public. So, need a motion to go into non-public. I would like to make a motion for non-public under RSA 91A32C and RSA 91A32D. All right, we have a motion in a second. So let's vote, and then we'll take a break.
Okay.
Mr. Pusey, if you could please.
Mr. Watson?
Yes.
Mr. Downs?
Yes.
Mrs. Stokes?
Yes.
Mr. Pappas?
Yes.
Mrs. Harrington?
Yes.
Mr. Lynch?
Yes.
Mrs. Stevens?
Yes.
Mr. Munn?
Yes.
Mr. Belair?
Yes.
Mrs. Grassi?
Yes.
Mr. Kamari? Mr. O'Connor?
Yes.
Mr. Nicholson?
Yes.
Thank you.
Did you see the election?
All right, you guys gonna take a minute?
Yeah, let's take 5 for that.
All right, we're good to go. So back on the non-public, is there anything else before we go? Mr. Fuller.
Mr. Lynch, I have a motion to make that we ask Attorney Gross to do a formal investigation on the matter brought up during the non-public session.
Is there a second? We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion passes. Anything else under other? Seeing none, is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?